About licking the fingers. You don't lick your fingers if you're a plumber.
Things may or may not have happened, and there's stories that could be shared. But for this podcast, we'll leave it at that.
Welcome to the Plumber Show, where we dive headfirst into the world of pipes, wrenches, and everything in between.
Welcome to the Plumber Show, powered by Einstein Pros. I'm your co-host, Alkrissa, and today we're diving deep into the trenches, literally.
Hey everyone, I'm V, and I'm super excited to hear Dan's story. I'm amazed by how much goes into this trade.
Ready to analyze the business side of things? How does one go from tightening pipes to managing a team?
Today, we're not just talking about wrenches and pipes, we're talking about ambition, grit, and building something from the ground up. Stick around because you won't want to miss this.
Everybody, my name is Dan. Thanks for joining the Plumber Show. And today we're going to be talking about the Journeyman's journey, pipe dreams to plumbing powerhouse. Stay tuned.
What's the most single humbling moment that experienced you as an apprentice, and how did it shape you?
I think the most challenging or humbling experience as an apprentice is realizing that you don't know anything about anything. And so from when you start as an apprentice, basically you're riding around in a truck and you're just told what to do, but you're not sure what is happening or what you're doing or how even plumbing works in the beginning. The only thing that I knew was I knew how to flush a toilet, and that was pretty much it.
Do you still remember what year you started as an apprentice?
Yeah, it was 1995. I started as an apprentice, and that was a long time ago. That was like 3 years ago,
No?
I believe. Well, actually, I was just looking for a job. I wasn't particularly wanting to be a plumber. It just turned out that one of my friends was a plumber, and so I applied for a job. And next thing you know, I was in the trenches doing plumbing, and the rest is
Okay.
history.
So that's actually connected to our next question. So, did you have a mentor that took you under their wing? Or what specific advice did this mentor give you that you still use today?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had a really cool guy that I worked with. His name was Ray, and he was an awesome journeyman. Really knew how to do plumbing well, but I really liked him because he wore a bandana, and I always thought that was pretty cool. So I remember that to this day, how cool it was to wear a bandana back then. But that was back in the time when Guns N' Roses was out on the radio, and so it was kind of the cool thing.
Did you wear a bandana too?
I did actually wear a bandana, but only on certain days.
You should show us the picture.
I actually have a couple pictures.
And since you're starting at a long time ago, so what do you think is one rookie mistake that you made that you look back on and you think you can laugh on now? Can you share this particular rookie mistake with us?
Well, there's a lot of rookie mistakes, but I think the biggest one was a funny one that we had, where you had to pull a balloon, and so you have to fill up the water out of the pipes all the way up through the roof. And then the journeyman, it's always kind of a joke to get the apprentice to pull the balloon for the first time because you're not experiencing what's going to happen to you. And so when you're going to pull the test from the main sewer, it's full of water and there's pressure all the way up through the roof, up through to outside. And so you pull that balloon and then it's a geyser. And the only thing that I remember is my journeyman saying, whatever you do, don't let go because the balloon's going to go down the sewer and then it's going to be a lot of money to get it out. So I was holding on to that balloon and water was just geysering in my face, and I was completely soaked from head to toe. And of course, I didn't know that there's a better way to do it, but that's kind of the fun of the journeyman telling the apprentice to pull the balloon for the first time.
I bet you had a lot of fun
Well,
there.
plumbing is. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was fun, but it was more of a learning experience.
Okay, so beyond your technical skills, What soft skills did you learn during your apprenticeship that proved valuable later?
That's a good question. As you go through the like my plumbing career, there's a lot of experience that you learn that you don't really think about, and that's completing jobs. And so that's just a life experience that is super helpful. Meaning, when you start a project, for us, we hook onto the main sewer and the water, and then we run it inside the house, and then we plumb the entire house, and then afterwards we set all the fixtures, and then we turn everything on, and everything works. So it's a matter of a completion. So starting something from the beginning and seeing it to the completion to see how it works. I think that was probably one of the coolest things that I've seen as a plumber, and that's been something that's helped me in my career because every job that I would do, I would see that completion process, and that helps me in other tasks in my life because I know how to start something, and then I know how to follow through to completion, and that's just a good overall basic set of skill set that is really important to have, I think.
Okay. So, since you started your apprenticeship in 1995, if I'm correct, when did Einstein Pros come into the picture?
Einstein Pros came into the picture 2012, but I started my company back in 2000, and I started another company, and then we rebranded back in 2012 to Einstein Pros.
Are there moments that uh, doubted your that you are there moments where you doubted your ability to succeed, and when you were experiencing these moments, what do you think kept you going?
Yeah, there was anytime that you start a business, there's never a guaranteed success path. It's always like, hey, this seems like a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. But throughout the times, there's difficult times in any kind of business where you're either not experienced because you've never done it before, or for me, I wasn't a businessman. I was trained as a plumber, and so learning the business aspect of how to run a business, how to lead guys, how to do billing, how to do all of that, and how to continually get work to keep a schedule full, and how to make money in a business so you can stay in business. Those were all things that I learned as I went. And so it became imperative for me to, I made a lot of mistakes, but I did a lot of good as well. And in that, I grew as a person, and that's an important journey.
There's one particular thing that I've been curious about in the plumbing industry. So, in the plumbing industry, we don't usually know a lot about it since you just call a plumber and then hire a plumber. Uh, what do you think changed in the plumbing industry through the years, especially because we went through the pandemic? So, technology changed a lot of things. Do you think that technology was able to change the whole plumbing industry since you started from today? What do you think are the things that you experienced change significantly because of the introduce of technology to the plumbing industry?
Yeah, that was a really long question, but I think I can remember it. Uh, Actually, that's actually really fascinating because plumbing has completely changed from when I started it. Started my business anyway. And so the first year I was in business, I remember everything was in yellow pages. And we didn't have internet in like what we do now, of course. So there wasn't any kind of ads that you could run. There wasn't any web pages. Nobody had any websites or anything like that. So the only way that you would find a plumber is you would either drive by a shop, or you would see an ad in Yellow Book or Yellow Pages. And so now, Yellow Book or the White Pages don't even exist, and everything is digital. So now you have to be a marketing expert. You have to have a website. You have to know how to run Google. You have to do Google Ads. You have to have a Facebook. You have to have all the social media, and you have to be really skilled in keeping up with all of that. Reviews. We didn't have online reviews. Basically, it was just like, hey, I'm going to open a business, I'm going to get a van, and I'm going to go get some work. And that's kind of how it was back in the day.
Oh, that's a huge difference back in the day, Dan. And do you think in the future we'll be having plumber robots?
I hope so.
No, someone's gonna take your job if we have plumbing robots.
No, I don't think anything's going to actually take the place of a plumber. I think there'll be robots that will assist in doing different tasks, but I don't think it'll take over completely because there's a level of expertise that's involved with problem solving as well as just technical ability that is necessary to have to be a plumber.
And I think robots cannot be soaked in water, so
Yeah,
So
that's a
they're
good point.
waterproof
Yeah, and
stuff
maybe
now.
maybe if there's maybe if there's waterproof robots in the future, that would be a good thing. Yeah. Especially, if I had a robot apprentice, the first thing I would tell it is, hey, can you pull that balloon?
I think the
I don't
robot
think it
would
would
cry.
care,
Uh,
honestly.
So if it's okay, can we ask how much you're earning now that you have a business in comparison to probably how much you were earning when you were an apprentice?
Well, considering that when I first became an apprentice, my salary was $6 an hour, so it's significantly gone up. Just wages have gone up since then, but that's what the going rate was. It's kind of neat how the plumbing trade goes because when you sign into the apprenticeship program, it's a 4-year program. You start out at a basic salary and then it works up. So, like, say for instance, like a journeyman wage these days, average journeyman wage is around $48 to $50 an hour, and so it's gone up significantly since then, which is nice because so has everything else. So
Uh,
so can you tell us your net worth today?
I didn't hear that. Say that again.
Can you tell us your net worth today?
My net worth is a lot more than $6 an hour.
I guess that.
so when did you realize that you had a potential to run a business? And what sparked that realization?
Um, it probably was maybe 2 years into my apprenticeship program where it's kind of like what happens. You're working, and you really don't understand what you're doing or why you're doing the things that you're doing. You're just following someone's orders from a journeyman, and they say, hey, do this, hook this up, do that. That's your next task, and so forth. But then one day, like a light bulb turned on, and then I was like, oh, I kind of understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it this way. And so it was kind of weird how it worked in my mind, but I'm a very visual person, and then all of a sudden in my brain, I was able to kind of figure things out, and so I could kind of visualize how I could plumb a house and the method and the reason why we were doing it, and I could apply it to principles and things that I had learned working with the journeyman. So that really made it something for me that was easy, and then from that, it just kind of grew into the right things to do, the reasons why we do it this way, and so forth. And then I realized that this was actually something that I was good at, and that I could actually own a business and make money doing this on my own, and not, working for someone else.
So, what do you think is the most unexpected challenge that you face transitioning from plumber to business owner?
Well, when I first started my company, I think you underestimate what has to happen to run a company, and so there's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of business licensing, and just the day to day. So I was the person that would answer the phone. I was the person doing the job, and then I would have to log everything that had to happen in QuickBooks, and then do the billing, do the deposits, and then go out and get work, get parts, and then do it all over again the next day. So it was pretty intense in the beginning because running a business isn't super easy, and especially a plumbing business is difficult because you're always working yourself out of a job every day. You're completing something, like we talked about earlier. And so every day you're finishing a job, you're doing another job. And so you're always running out of work, and you always have to continue to get more work, whether that's service or new construction or commercial.
Oh, so after you do your plumbing work, you're gonna do the office works.
Yeah, and so I was up until, 7 or 8 at night. Every night I'd work during the day, and then I'd have to do all my paperwork and enter everything into QuickBooks, and then back into the field again, answering phones, going out and getting work, and then the same thing, at night doing all the office work. So it's a lot in the beginning. If you're starting a business and you're doing it on your own, of course, it's not super easy. There's a lot to it, actually. And that was back then when we didn't even have the internet or websites or anything. Now it's
Are you
totally
all
different.
doing it? You're all doing it.
Yeah, I was actually doing everything by hand because we didn't really use laptops or have cell phones that had any kind of ability to do anything. They just answered phones. That was back then. So.
Now you have to
So
put
what
TikTok that.
phone do you have?
I had just a flip phone, and so it was kind of like the one off of Star Trek in the old Star Trek, and it was like boop boop, and then it was like hello, and you couldn't even have different ringtones. I mean, it was just like it was about as basic as you could get. I think my father has that one now.
Now?
Yeah, now.
Still have that one? The flip
Yeah,
phone?
yeah, he does actually.
He should change
So,
his
what do you
phone.
think makes you very happy as a plumber?
Well, there's a term in plumbing, and it's paydays on Friday and shit runs downhill, and don't lick your fingers. But other than that, I think, seeing that the completion process, making people happy, as a plumber, mostly we do service plumbing. I look at it like we're saving somebody. They're calling because they've got an issue. It's really problematic and they don't know how to fix it themselves. And so they're looking for someone as an expert to come in and fix their problem. And for me, that's kind of like a hero. Like we're coming in as the hero to fix and to save the day, to give somebody hot water, or to fix a toilet so that they can go to the bathroom and not have to go to work and use the restroom there. Things like that, where it's a rewarding job, being able to take care of people and do a good job. And people really appreciate that most of the time.
You mentioned about licking the fingers. You don't lick your fingers if you're a
As
plumber.
As a plumber, that's a no-no. And so, especially as a service plumber, it's one of the things that you just never touch your face and you never touch anything as you're working. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So
So
we use
afterwards,
gloves now, latex gloves. But back in the day, I worked with this one guy, and I remember the first time that I went on a sewer call with him, and we had this like it was like a restaurant, and we had to pull a toilet, and the toilet was full of poop and other gross things, and then we had to set it aside, so there was stuff that went everywhere, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This is really gross. And he
yeah.
didn't wear gloves because you can't wear gloves when you're operating a snake because it can grab them and then it can break your fingers or your hands, unless they're special gloves. But my boss was too cheap to buy those gloves. So this guy didn't have any gloves, and then he starts putting it, the snake down the drain, and he clears the drain, and he had long hair like me, and I just remember it was like really hot, and then he was like, "Oh man, it's hot," and then he like pulled his hair back, and then I thought to myself, like, man, I think I'm in the wrong trade. Like, this is really gross. I don't know if I can do this as a service plumber. And so I switched from there to new construction, where I only touch clean pipes, and I didn't want to do service ever after I saw that experience. But that's another story. And now we do service, in my own company, but we don't touch anything. So
But I think
good
I'm
to
more
know.
curious about the service calls. Did you ever touch poop or something like that?
Well, it's pretty unavoidable, actually. I remember I was working with a journeyman when I was an apprentice, and we were working on a job, and we had what's called a sewage ejector system where there's not enough grade. So, like when you flush a toilet, that it doesn't have enough fall to make it to the sewer. So it goes into a big holding tank, and there's a big pump, and it ejects it and then pushes it up to the street. And it was broken and it wasn't working. And the journeyman that I was working with that day, he disconnected the pipes, and then he said, "Hey, hold this float up." And I was like, okay, but I wasn't sure what the float did. And so he was like taking it apart, la 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 la. And then the float dropped, and then that engaged the pump. And then it in his face, all over the place. And it was like a very poopy day for that guy. It was very funny. Got in his mouth. Pretty gross stuff. But as a plumber, we run into these things all the time where it's like maybe that's why we get paid more than other trades, is because we have to deal with everybody else's stuff that they don't want to touch. That's what I think, anyway.
That is literally a poopy day.
It was a
Real.
very poopy day. Yeah, he had to go home and change his clothes because, he didn't go back to work after that. That was pretty gross.
Well, I can't imagine, like, how do you manage the smell, the sight of poop? I don't want to imagine it.
Well, so not every day is a poopy day. I'd say that, maybe out of 30 jobs, you'll run into a couple that are not the greatest. But for the most part, it's just an average day. You're pulling toilets, fixing faucets, installing hose bibs and, kitchen faucets, things like that in the service side. You do occasionally, we do drains, things like that, but for the most part, that stuff is a lot cleaner these days than it used to be back in the day because we have appropriate equipment to keep us clean, and so we're not actually physically touching things anymore. We have appropriate clothing and gloves these days, so it's a lot nicer. Not like it was back in my day, where it was kind of like a free for all, and it was like you just go out there, you're in a truck, and it was just you and another guy, and whatever happened, you just did it, and that's what you're expected to do. So things have really drastically changed these days, but they didn't have OSHA back then. They didn't really have any kind of policies that would really, protect or help the employees out to keep clean. It was just kind of expected just to do whatever you had to do. Um, so
Okay.
Yeah, I
a
think
lot
that's
better
an
these days.
poopy talks for now. Let's
Okay.
go back to Beat's question.
So, how did you build your initial client base, and what marketing strategies did you use?
Well, that's a good question. So, how I did it is I had in the town that I was at, a lot of the restaurants in town. I end up getting to know the owners of the restaurants, and I built my business based on business to business. So, introducing myself, going out, I spent a lot of time trying to get to know the community and the business owners in the community. And then that led me into different aspects where I could meet different people and so forth to get my name out as a plumber. And so back then I was known as Dan the Plumber. And I got to know quite a few people, and they all called me, Dan the Plumber at that time before I branded my company.
Speaking of being socially there and talking to people, did you get hit on while on a job?
Well, now that's an interesting story. That's another question that it's probably, well, we'll just go say yes. I have plenty of stories. I have plenty of stories as a plumber where things may or may not have happened, and there's stories that could be shared. But For this podcast, we'll leave it at that.
Oh no.
So, why did you choose the franchise model with Einstein Pros, and what benefits did you see in it?
So, well, the reason I branded Einstein was because he was, of course, a genius. And Einstein had said, if I could do it all over again, I would have been a plumber. And that was right before he died. I thought it was a really cool story. There was a plumber that actually reached out to Einstein and corresponded with him for years and years. And there was news articles that were mentioned about that when it happened. But Einstein was really a cool guy, and the way that he thought about plumbing was it protects the health of the nation, and he thought it was a very notable trade, and that it was something that we could use and needed as a society to keep us clean so that we didn't have disease or any kind of health issues, which is completely correct.
I'm really curious about this. So, have you met anyone while on the job that you were romantically involved with?
No.
I think you just don't want to share that to us.
No. No, it's not usually a place to date people when you're working as a plumber, but yeah, no.
Like, I can imagine someone inviting you to go with her to the hot tub and just like something like that.
So you may have heard that story. Someone may have. One time I did get invited. I was working on a very beautiful woman's